All right, I see some more people logging in. It's 9 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. Thank you for showing up this morning. Mike Rosenbaum from Track and Field states that the 4x100 relay race is as much a skill event as a speed event. And a team with 4 decent sprinters can outrace a team with 4 better sprinters by beating them in the exchange zone. And the key is how much time is the baton spending in those exchange zones. So I want to be the first one to welcome you to Q4. It is officially October 1st. I'm Mark Kohler. I'm the president of Lead with Purpose. And again, I'm really excited to be here to share with you the top 3 actions you can take to optimize your company's transition, create a winning Q4 plan, and finish 2015 strong. So from the attendees I see, I noticed that we have some people who have been using Lead with Purpose many years. Some have been using it less than a year, and others are tuning in for the first time. So I want to welcome you all. And this is the first in a series of monthly leadership webinars we'll be hosting to discuss one of the street-proven leadership best practices that you can use to get everyone on the same page, really passionate about what they're doing, and focused on what matters most. We're calling it the E3 Learning Series. So with 1 quarter left, what I want you to do is type in the chat, with 1 quarter left, what's the biggest challenge you will face that will affect your Q4? Why don't you type that in? Good. Profit margin, realistic goal setting, okay? Maximizing time, so revenue, closing opportunities, good. Revenue shortfall, expansion, how to do it. That's great. That's great that you're looking to expand. So if we look at those, and I want you to write this down. If you could take out a piece of paper, just write it down on a piece of paper. I want you to write that biggest challenge down. And then what I want you to do is draw an arrow to the right of that. And I want you to think about, you don't have to put it in the chat, but I want you to think about what would be the impact to your business if you could overcome this challenge, just on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being not very big and 10 being highly impactful. What would be the impact to the business if you could overcome this challenge in Q4? Just think about what is the impact to the business if you could overcome this challenge. And then I'll have you take and put 1 more arrow to the right of what you just wrote. And this is where it comes down to today is what is the biggest obstacle to overcoming this challenge? Because that's what we want to identify. Again, what is the biggest obstacle to overcoming this challenge that could have a major impact to your business? I'll give you a little bit of time just to write that down on a piece of paper, just put some scratches, and you can go back afterwards and talk with your team about this. Okay, good. So as a basis, many of you have seen this slide before, but I want to go back to really what Lead with Purpose was founded upon. And this African proverb you've probably seen before. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So Lead with Purpose is really built around engagement. This is not a solo effort anymore. It's about getting everyone on board and rowing in the same direction. And I'm not saying as a leader, sometimes you don't have to go out fast to identify opportunities and threats. But if we go fast all the time, we're going to find ourselves alone. And in today's market that's changing so rapidly, that could be disastrous. So Lead with Purpose, we're about helping you to get better results. And we believe that the best results are not achieved with a command and control style organization where one person at the top is making all the decisions. The best results come when we as leaders are able to create strong teams where people are really engaged in their jobs. And so this next sentence is really important. You've heard me say this a lot, is this is the key to your results. It's getting engaged employees. So again, everything we create, everything we discuss at Lead with Purpose, if you're in on our conversations, it's centered around helping leaders create engaged people. We found that over the long haul, an engaged team wins every time. Because what you do is you tap into a team of people who really care about their jobs and are excited to solve problems, manage change, and drive success. But best of all is that you can do this from a single page plan. So let's review really quickly the single page plan because we're going to be referencing it today. And again, I know some of you have been using it for 3 years and some of you are really new to it. So this might be a lot of information for those who are really new to it. So on the page, what you're going to see is these are the 7 elements that we believe you need to properly engage people and run your company. In general, the items in red make up the longer term inspiring story and are used to engage people. The items in blue are shorter term tactical goals and are used to empower people. The engage and empower sections are tightly connected and aligned, and here's how. So say, for example, we have Susie who sits in finance. She has a quarterly goal, and that quarterly goal is connected to one of the annual goals, and that annual goal is connected to one of the long-term goals, and the long-term goals are connected to supporting reaching the 10-year blue sky vision, and that blue sky vision supports reaching your brand purpose, the reason you exist and the difference you make in the world. So what we've intentionally done is given you the ability to engage Susie by showing her how the short-term task or goal that she is working on is directly connected to making a difference in the world. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this, all of the boxes that are down here in dark blue, these are the quarterly boxes. They all connect up this same exact way for everybody. So, and again, this is the key to engaging employees and helping you get better results. So let's get back, and we're going to reference this here, but let's get back to helping you finish 2015 strong. And again, we need to have a great transition between Q3 and Q4. So let's focus on the top 3 things that you're going to do. So let's talk high level, and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper. The first thing we need to do is we need to be prepared. We need to do a transition meeting, and the preparation step for the transition meeting is really important. Number 2 is we need to actually hold the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting. And I'm going to go through what that agenda looks like today and some key tips you can use to make it really effective. And then finally, number 3, it doesn't do us any good just 6 or 7 of us to sit in a meeting and then not roll that out to the company. So these are the 3 steps. We're going to go through these in detail: preparation, the transition meeting, and then roll out to the company. So let's talk about preparation. Now, when we look at preparation, the first thing we need to do is we need to create a shared Q4 vision. So with your team, create a shared vision of what it looks and feels like to be at the last day of 2015. Now, I specifically said shared vision, not just your vision. Remember, it's about engagement, and when we include people in the shared vision and helping to create that, we engage them. And so involving them in the process helps us to get buy-in. That's a key piece. So how do we do that? So you need to transform to December 31st, 2015. And if we think about, when you look on the screen, you're here at October 1st, and we need to time travel to the end of December. And there's a couple ways we can do that. The first way is if you want to go out and find Marty and Doc, we can do that. They can plug in December 31st, 2015. But actually, it's a little easier than that. And let's just take a look at an example of how we would do that. So let's if you take a look at all of your annual goals that were set at the beginning of the year and identify how far along you are to completing them. Right? So are you 80% complete for this one? Are you 50% complete for this one? So let's use this image to illustrate the concept of how you're going to create your Q4 vision. Okay, so on January 1st, when we started the year, you're at the bottom step and have 0 revenue. Your annual goal is at the top of the stairs and is set at 16 million to be completed on December 31st, 2015. And we've just planned throughout the year that we're going to add $4 million in revenue every single quarter. So throughout the year, you start managing and taking a look at what you actually bring in. And in Q1, you have $3 million in revenue. And in the middle of the year, you actually have $7 million year to date, so you're $1 million behind. And we just finished Q3, and you find out that your actual is at 10 million. Now again, your goal of where you wanted to be was at 12 million. So the issue is, are you going to be able to make this jump? Are you going to be able to say Q4, I'm going to be able to do $6 million in revenue? So this is the evaluation you need to go through. Now, what I would tell you is if you've never done $6 million in revenue in a quarter, it might be considered an unrealistic goal by your organization. So you might want to revise it and take a look at it so they see it as being realistic. Now, you might have a big contract that's waiting or proposal that's going to come in and going to come through that's going to bridge that gap. But this is just an example of what you would go through to analyze your annual goal for this. And now you can see what the gap is. So what you do is with your team, you need to go through each one of the goals and do that. And what it does is it gives everyone a strong understanding of the status of the progress towards an annual goal and the viability of all the annual goals that you have. Once you're able to do this, you're able to take that gap. What you're able to do is put it all together, and this is your shared Q4 vision. This is the number one thing you can do. This is not you doing it alone. This is you doing it with your team. And what it is at the end of Q4, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. This is what we're going to accomplish. Now, if you don't have very well-defined goals for the end of the year, this can take upwards of 45 minutes to 60 minutes to do this and update and define them. What we found is that Lead with Purpose users, it's really easy. And really, this is about a 5 or 10 minute stand-up meeting because the plan is reviewed weekly and constantly updated so everyone knows the exact status of annual and quarterly goals. And this can be viewed on the next page. In this box, you can see is the December 31st vision. So these are the annual goals that were set December 31st, and that's your vision that you currently have. Down here in these boxes, with the quarterly boxes, this is what you just finished in September 30th, 2015. So what's really easy here is you can see down here, a little bit hard to see, but way down here, right underneath here, it says this 12 million year-to-date in sales. And right here, you're currently at 10 million. You can see the status of the quarterly goal. And then you can also see the status of the annual goal. So again, very easy for when you're using Lead with Purpose to be able to do that and have this status. And from this, you can create this gap. And this right here, up here in the annual goals box, is actually your Q4 vision, what you're looking at. Now, what leaders are to do, once you've done that with your leadership team, your leaders are supposed to go to their departments with that vision and with this update of where they currently are, understanding what the gap is, and then create a set of Q4 goals. So I'm just going to stop right here. Are there any questions right now of the process of creating your Q4 vision with your team? So if everything's good, just type in yes. And if you have any questions, please do that too. Good. Yes. Yes. Okay, good. Good. So good question. Julie asks, do you change the annual goals at this point or after the review? So your leadership team would slightly alter the goals before you go out to your departmental, because they're going to want to know, like as an example, the sales goal of 16 million might be too much, so you might drop that down to 15 million. And before the sales manager takes that off to their team, they're going to want to know, hey, the gap is 5 million, not 6 million. That'll make a difference. So yeah, you slightly alter the vision with your team helping you to make that Q4 vision, and then you go out to the departments. Okay, great question, Scott. So if you keep modifying revenue goals, how does staff keep faith in what you're trying to achieve? I think what we have to understand is a goal is what we're trying to achieve, and I would not have these be modified very easily. So you just can't go in and say, hey, I'm only going to do $12 million of revenue. So what it has to be is it really has to be by the team, and the team holds each other accountable. People are going to know when you're supposed to do $16 million in sales and you're only going to do 10, I mean, there's a real problem there. So don't adjust the goals very freely. So good question. Okay, so it sounds like everybody's on board here. So let's go to the next slide. So once you and the leadership team have this vision, what you're going to do is they're going to complete department team meetings. And we're going to go through this, these 3 steps that you do. And it's really fun for them to do. You can evaluate, they're going to evaluate the Q3 goals, and I'm going to talk to you about what you're going to be able to do. You either complete, you move, or delete. That's one thing. Number 2 is they're going to share stories of how they've lived the values, the brand purpose, and the vision, and celebrate their own success. And then what they're going to do is set the Q4 SMART goals. Now, these meetings are somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes long for each department. So if we look at, let's talk about evaluate Q3. So if I'm the sales department, the boxes that they're going to focus on are the goals, the annual goals up top here, and then they're also going to focus on their specific quarterly box down below here. So that's just for the sales and marketing team. And most goals are completed. Some of them are moved to the next quarter, and some of them are deleted. And I know this, Scott, you asked a really good question. You don't delete goals just because you're not making it, but you do want to have the ability as a team to say, hey, 3 months ago, this was a really great idea that we had, and it's just not relevant anymore. And that doesn't happen very often, but sometimes I find people saying, hey, I'm the one who committed to that goal. And what you have to understand is that things are changing so rapidly right now. So there's a balance between holding people accountable and going after goals that aren't really relevant anymore. So, but you have to have the ability to do that. And it isn't one person, the salesperson coming and saying, hey, I'm going to delete this goal. It's the salesperson coming and saying, hey, look, this is the goal we have. These are the challenges we've had. This is what we're going to really get to. And this is how we're working through trying to still achieve that goal. So that's just an example for the sales department. It would be the same for the HR and finance. They would be focused on this top box here because that's the vision for the entire company. And then what they would do is they would be just focused on their box right here. So if we go to the next slide, so that's one. Number 2 is sharing stories. And I'll share with you some of the ideas and some of the things we're seeing people do. It's just really fabulous. The simple things you can do to help really engage people and recognize them. But here's an example where you take a look at your brand purpose and your values, which are at the top of the page. And you also look at your blue sky vision, and what you're doing is you're just sharing stories of how people have lived the brand purpose, lived the values, the blue sky vision. And this is just a big, fun encouragement fest. Hey, I remember the time when Luis went above and beyond, stayed later than needed to so that we could get the customer their product. So this is just a really fun time for people to share those. And you as your department head, what they should be doing is gathering this information because they're going to bring this back to the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting that you're going to hold. Okay, and then finally is setting Q4 goals. And you can set a new goal in the software. And if you don't use the software, that's okay. You can use a piece of paper, Excel spreadsheet, Word document. And someone asked, will we get a copy of these slides? Yes, you will get a copy of these slides, and the recording will be available too, so you can rewatch it. So, but you can set a new goal in the software on Lead with Purpose. You can put in a detailed description. You can put in an action plan, and then identify any potential obstacles. So that's the third piece, because what that team is going to do is they're going to set the Q4 vision that the department leader is then going to come back to the leadership team, and in the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting is going to present how their department did in Q3, going to share some stories, and then also identify the Q4 goals. So good. So this piece is really key. This is just a summary for the first step for the preparation. Number 1, it's create a shared vision of what the end of December looks like. If you're standing on December 31st, 2015, what does it look like? Everyone goes in, updates their goals. You gather the leadership team. Again, this can be 5 minutes long, can be 30, 60 minutes long. And then in that meeting, also set with the people, the department and transition meeting expectations. And again, in red is the word shared, because we need to do this with our team so we keep them engaged and we get buy-in to this. Now, the second part of the preparation is departmental team meetings. So where the department heads I just went through go and meet with their team. They're to evaluate Q3 goals, again, completed, moved, or deleted, share the best of Q3 stories, and then set SMART Q4 goals. And we recommend no more than 3 to 5. And this is sometimes very hard for people, but I would tell you that typical transitions, it's 3 to 5. In the last quarter, you might need to have 5 because you're trying to get a lot done and meet the goal. But I would try to make it 3, 4 really strong ones. You have Thanksgiving coming up. You have Christmas coming up. So just be really aware of that. Okay, so the next slide is really a check-in with you. Why don't we check in? Any questions right now on the first step? The first key step is preparation, what you see on the screen. So if you can just type in if everything's good, just type in yes, and if you need some further clarification, just please type in your question. Good, Jessica? All right, good to go, yes? Very good. Okay, so it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now what I want you to do, I'm just gonna break here just for a second. So what's your, from this first section, which is so key, this preparation section, what's your biggest takeaway from this? What's your biggest takeaway? Just type it in the question. What's your biggest takeaway from this section? Good, love the African proverb. Yeah, it's the baseline, Becky, for us. Scott, really good. It's good to punctuate each quarter with a transition, right? That transition is an evaluation, but it's also a celebration of all the effort that your team put together, and then sets them a vision for what the next quarter looks like. Very, very important. Critical to build culture of accountability, yes. Yep, positive way to set the next quarter goals. Very good, Julie. Luis, sharing is a most important issue for me. However, how do you know all are committed to them? So there's key questions that I will ask. Now, since you've given people the responsibility and empowered them to say, hey, look, here's where I want to be. Here's where we've decided as a team to be together. Before you leave that vision meeting with your leadership team, I always look around the table and ask for a thumbs up. Hey, we've just talked about a lot of stuff and we've slightly changed some things. Is everyone bought into this, right? And because if there aren't any questions, this is what we're going to go forward with, right? This doesn't happen overnight, but when you have a very open and transparent and can have really critical conversations with each other, it's really important because once you leave that meeting, everybody leaves that meeting saying, hey, this is the vision that we're going to try to do. So it's good to, I always do a check-in. I recommend the department heads do a check-in also. And then when we get into the Q3, Q4 transition meeting, I do check-ins after every single department presents. So, and I'll go through that too. So Richard, yeah, so how about creating incentivizing stretch goals to reach the original 60 million revenue? Yes, that if you have the right people, that's exactly what you should do, Richard, is don't just change the goal. You need to go, how are we going to make that? That's the gap. How are we going to get there? And so the reason I bring up the $16 million goal and having that gap is, what I find is that if you have a leadership team that's really strong and understands what the common shared vision is, there might be something else that's on the table that the team has to take off of the table and shift to Q1 of next year so that the entire team can be brought to bear on creating a system around stretch goals or about incentivizing people. So that's what it's really for. What are the biggest issues? And then evaluate what we can take off of the table, because that's what we're looking to do too. Okay, good idea to check in with all. Okay, so it looks like we're at a good point right now. So if we take a look at the key point, number one is preparation. And for a winning Q4 roadmap, number one is preparation. And again, it's called the shared vision. It's called a department team meeting because the team is involved, and preparation is key. So the next one we're going to go to is the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting. Now, what I would recommend is that you leave at least a week in between the time that you and your leadership team meet and set what the shared Q4 vision is, and leave at least a week in between to do the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting. Because what that allows, it allows the department head to go out to their team, talk with them about what the shared Q4 vision is, have their department meeting, and then be ready for the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting. Now, we're seeing teams that are using Lead with Purpose and have made it a habit complete these transition meetings in 2 hours. And we're going to go through what that looks like. So the agenda is storytelling. Every department leaders to come prepared with at least 3 stories of how people have lived the brand purpose, the values, the vision, or have gone above and beyond. And then each department leader is given 15 minutes, and they need to be prepared for this. They're given 15 minutes to evaluate Q3 and share what the Q4 goals are. And this is really a celebration of Q3 and setting the vision for Q4. So it's storytelling for about 20 minutes. I've seen this shift to 30 minutes. If you have great stories coming out that's really helping to build your culture, it's pretty tremendous. Just let it go. Then what you do is you do a SWOT review. We recommend you take a look and do a SWOT analysis, see if anything's changed. You can see I've only put 15 minutes on there because you should be reviewing your SWOT every single month. And then review of the 2015 annual goals. We should already know where those really stand, about 15 minutes. And then it's 15 minutes per person to do the Q3 review and Q4 goals. Okay, great. So Julie asked, when do you ideally start the review? Last week of Q3? Yes, I recommend that you do it the last week of Q3. Now, some companies I know are really pushing to make months end revenue-wise or quarters end. So just be cognizant of that. It's not going to kill anyone if this happens in the first week of Q4. So good question. But yes, you'd ideally like to do it as soon as possible. Sometimes I see people doing it 6-7 weeks later, and they're already halfway through the quarter. So again, as close as possible to the end of the quarter. Okay, so I'm talking a lot about stories. Some of you have seen these things, but there's a real reason behind stories. And human beings are wired for storytelling. And again, I'm an operations engineering type of guy, and I never thought I'd be fairly decent at stories. And using what's on the single page plan, it's been really helpful for me to become a better storyteller. And what you're doing is you're taking advantage of what human beings are wired for. Now, when we hear the words once upon a time, our brain changes chemical composition and shifts. So again, when we hear once upon a time, we're ready to accept the story. But they've done studies and they've shown that the brain on data, if you just present data, this is the logic part of your brain. When we are presented with data, only 2 areas of our brain fire. But when we hear a story, 7 areas of our brain light up. And a story is really the only way to activate the parts in the brain so that a listener turns the story into their own idea and experience. So again, really important. There's evidence behind that we should tell stories. Now there's some really simple things that we've done, and I'm going to share with you some of these examples. This is basically a caught in the act slip. So this is a company that uses it, and what they do is they're able to recognize each other for living their brand purpose, their values, and their blue sky vision. So you can create your own stories where the hero of the story is the employee, again, living those values, brand purpose, or vision. Now, what you do with those is you take and put them up on the wall. This was in a manufacturing facility. Their purpose, they craft inspiring spaces, and they put it in Spanish. On the side, you can see the little caught in the X slips, and they're starting to build this story, and we call this a campfire. One other example, more well developed, is a company I work with in Bandy called Proline. So this is what they have in their lunchroom. You can see that they have their each one of their values, and then around it are all the stories and of people encouraging each other and living your purpose. These are just really easy things. If you're struggling to figure out what type of stories you should bring to the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting, we call this a campfire wall. So go to your campfire wall, and these are very easy to create. If you're interested, I can just send me an email at the end, and I can help you with this. But this is very powerful. One last one I'll share with you is this. This is a manufacturing company in Southern California, and you can see they have all of their images for their brand purpose, values, and blue sky vision. And then you can see down here, you can see all of the different stories that are being told. So when we take a look at storytelling, because this is the first piece of it, again, each department head is to bring 3 examples of people living the values and being able to tell these stories. And what I want you to do in the meeting is just keep track of them. And it becomes really impressive. So here's an example. Susan, who's the VP of engineering, might come to the meeting and say, hey, look, I want to recognize Bill, who's one of my engineers. Here's what he did. He delivered a project 2 weeks early, worked late on his own, and what he did is he exhibited the value of striving for excellence. All right, so that's really powerful. Susan has 2 other ones that she talks about. And then you might have another one where Julie, who's the customer service manager, says, hey, Frank, who works in my customer service department, just, great feedback from our number 1 customer. He really listened to them. And so what you're doing is you're using the value as part of the story with the hero being Frank. Now, here's the real key, and this is a great tip because you can get a lot more out of this. What I'd ask you to do is cross-engage. So what you do is you take one of the people who's in the leadership meeting, say it's Lisa, who's the VP of marketing, just heard that story. When she leaves the meeting, what she's to do is to take 1, 2, 3 minutes, just go up to Bill and say, hey, we just had our transition meeting, and Susan talked about how you delivered a project 2 weeks early and worked late on your own. I really appreciate you striving for excellence. Bill and Frank and all these employees, they wonder when we go into these rooms what we're talking about because we've got the door closed. And what this does is lets them know that when we're in that meeting, hey, my name was actually brought up in that meeting. So this is really powerful. Don't have Susan go back out to Bill and say this. Have Lisa or someone else. And then likewise, just keep track of this. Scott, who's the VP of operations, would go to Frank, the customer service rep, and say, hey, Julie talked about this. And this is just a great way to really keep employees engaged and really let them know that you're discussing them. So real quick, does this make sense? This really simple tool to use. If it makes sense, just say yes. If you have any questions on it, I'd like to make sure you understand this. Yes, 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 you guys are good. Okay, good. So use this. I love using this, and you can use it throughout the entire year. The Q3 to Q4 transition just makes it really good. So next is review the SWOT, your SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You can see I put 15 minutes in here. You're not to go and spend 3-4 hours to go through this. Now, you should be very aware of what's going on with your strengths and weaknesses. And a lot of things change a lot quicker in the outside. Understand what the opportunities and threats are. And really what you're looking at is you're asking yourself these questions. Are these still relevant? Any changes that we need to make in priority? As an example here, you might have, hey, processes have been our weakness for the last 2 quarters, but we've really been working on processes. Is that really the number 1 weakness that we have? And you might be able to move that down to number 3. You might remove it from the list altogether, but this allows you to juggle and move things around. And what's nice is that in Lead with Purpose, you're able to move these things very quickly. And then for anything, are there any goals based upon the SWOT that we need to put in place? Hey, for these old machines, is there a goal we need to put in place and find out how we can look at newer machines? So that's the SWOT review. Now the 2015 annual goals, you've already gone through once with the leadership team, and what you're doing is you're just finding out if any of the department meetings uncovered anything different, and you're spending literally 15 minutes on this saying, hey, look, at the end of the year, this is where we're going to be. So just spend 15 minutes, you and revise and update any of the goals. And then finally, it's the Q3 to Q4. Every department head's given 15 minutes. They can use it how they want to. The first thing they're to start off with is their Q3 accomplishments. And so as an example for HR and finance, and this is taken directly from Lead with Purpose and is on the one page. Basically, all you do is present that, hey, we completed two goals, one still at risk, and those were our accomplishments. And you would talk a little bit more about those things that you did to create a visual map, and you did sexual harassment training, where your progress is with hiring 10 people. And then what you do is you present what the Q4 goals are. And this is from when you as the department leader were meeting with your team. So in Q4, there's open enrollment. They're going to do a DISC assessment, and they're going to talk about doing some training for effective meetings, and HR needs to be involved in hiring an engineer. And that's really how simple it is. Now, in each one of these, what we'd ask you to do for the Q4 goals, we'd ask you to identify an action plan. We'd ask you to identify detailed steps, and any potential obstacles that you might encounter. So if we go to the next slide. So I'm just going to stop right here. Does this make sense? Does how you do this Q3 to Q4? There's some on the I know there's some on the line here who are sitting in. They're just great users and they fully understand this. Could probably teach this. So okay, good, great, yes, thanks, perfect. Okay, good, awesome. Okay, so one of the things that I really recommend in Q4 is I really recommend you stay at 3 goals per department. You know, today a lot is demanding of our time and attention, and we need to really help people make really good decisions on what matters most. And when we give them a list of unmanageable goals, we give them 5, 6, 7, 8 goals, it's just harder for them. So we really need to sit down and make sure that in this meeting that we're identifying what the top 3 to 5 are and prioritize those in order of importance. You know, again, this is what will help people focus, and everyone knows the understanding of focusing. So Julie asks a question here, does Q4 goal discussion go through obstacles and actions? Yes, it does. So in the, what we see is a lot of companies have the software open, and what they do is they'll click on the, I'll just go back here. So what they'll do, Julie, is they'll just click on open enrollment, and what it does is it exposes and opens up a section where you can put in all this additional information. And they'll talk about that. So we talked about this. Okay, good. So we've step 1 to a winning Q4 roadmap, which is preparation. And we just talked about the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting and the 4 steps for that. So any questions, any additional questions you have right now for the second most important thing, which is the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting? If you don't have any questions, just say no. No questions, good, all good, I'm good, perfect. Okay, good. So we're going to go through the 3rd step here, which is rolling out the plan. And this will be pretty quick. It's really important that we roll out the plan. This is really fun. This takes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. What your goal is, right? So your goal at the end of the meeting, it'll be a really successful meeting if everyone understands how the quarterly goals that you have in Q4 connect to the brand purpose. Because if we can, again, if we can show people how the quarterly goals connect to the brand purpose, it creates that engagement. And as we know, engaged employees are a lot easier to lead. So it'll be really important. That's your goal. Now, what we've seen people do a lot of different things. But basically, I would call an all-hands meeting. I'd set it out about a week. You might want to bring in a little bit of food, or you might want to do a lunch afterwards. Basically, what we recommend is that every leader of every department stands up and presents their department's Q3 success and the Q4 goals. And this isn't a 15 minutes. This is 3 to 5 minutes for each person. This is just a highlight. Here's the things that we accomplished, and even share some caught in the act slips with them. And then you can say, hey, here's where we need to get to in Q4. Now, I do recommend that the leader kick off the meeting by talking about where the company is up to Q3 and what the vision looks like for the end of Q4. And again, this is not a 20, 30-minute conversation. This is literally 3 to 5 minutes. Hey, here's where we are. Here's what we've accomplished. And what's great about Lead with Purpose is you can go to the accomplishment section and you can find out, hey, we decided that we wanted to do 52 goals. We've actually gotten 45 of them complete. And that's a huge success for us this year. And then here's what we really need you to focus on. So what you're doing as a leader, you're setting expectations and making sure that they understand how winning in Q4 is going to be really helpful, and this should really engage them. So then what you do is you hang the new plan around the office monthly, and we have companies doing this, but monthly you should have it be a habit that you get together with the team. And literally it's 10 or 15 minutes with the entire company. Hey, 15-minute all hands. And these are some of the things that I learned while I was in the submarine force and some of the meeting structure. So it's really important to bring the entire team together. Here's where we are. Here's the progress we've made, and here's where we still need to go. So any questions on the rollout of the Q4 plan? What questions does anyone have any questions? And if it's and if you're okay, just say good. Good. You guys are good. Okay, now you're getting the whole thing. That's excellent. Good. From this section, And I'll put it on the screen here for you. So what's the top things you take away from the transition meeting? What's the top thing you take away from the rollout of the plan? Very good, Jeff. Team leader reports Q3 accomplishments, then explains Q4 goals. Right, and I can tell you that the companies that are doing this and running their companies on a 90-day cycle, their annual transition to 2016 will take 4 hours. It will only take 4 hours. They're so in tune with what their annual goals are and what their quarterly goals are that it becomes less of, hey, we're just going to replan for 2016. It becomes more of, hey, we're on this trajectory, and if we keep going, we want this to be our 2016 end of year goals. And what it is, it's really just a longer transition from Q4 of 2015 to Q1 of 2016. Okay, it is time work investing to make sure it happens. Yep. Good, Becky. Need to do better about rollout to the entire company. Yes. Need to recognize the wins the company has made. Yes. And that's why we run all the annual goals have quarterly goals. And I was struggled as a leader when I just had an annual goal, and I got 3 of the 4 things done, and I couldn't check off the annual goal. So what's nice is that you can have the success of checking off the 3 quarterly goals that make up the annual goal, and you might shift the 1/4 one to the next one. Building a collaborative environment, very good. Cross engagement, yeah, great practice. And then Scott says, important to align with leadership and communicate to team to ensure engagement. Exactly. Okay, good. So we're going to wrap up here, and then I'm going to open up to some further Q&A. So the entire blueprint for creating an engaged and empowered workforce is our book, Leading with Purpose. It's currently available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, so you can take a look at it. The official launch, and I'm figuring this out, how is it available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon? The official launch is October 8th, and we're going to hold it at Barnes & Noble in San Diego. So that's going to be an exciting event, but you can get copies of the book. You can get copies of the book for your team. And if we have certified executive coaches, you can get copies of the book. That's going to make the meetings a lot better. The other thing is we have coaching and 2016 planning workshops coming up, Friday, November 20th, Friday, December 4th and 11th, Thursday, December 17th, Friday, January 8th, 5th, and 22nd. If you're interested in any of these dates, just send me an email, and I'll get you the logistics and locations. These are basically half-day sessions. They're for companies who have used Lead with Purpose for 3 or 4 years, and they're for companies who have never used it. It's going to be for both. We're going to wrap up. So if we were to sum everything up, what's the one thing you're going to do? What's the one action you're going to take? Because you've invested, the time today to sit in on the webinar, interested in creating a strong Q4 to finish strong in 2015. What's the one action item you're going to do so that you can make that happen? Again, what's the one action item you're going to take away from this so you can create a winning Q4 and finish 2015 strong? Good, Luis. Need to work on a program to better implement our goals. Good, Becky. Set transition meeting with the board. Yes. Set up transition meeting. Good. With leadership. Schedule strategy meeting with the VPs. Transition meeting. I'm going up to my plan and get prepared for transition. Hey, this is really encouraging for me, because what I see people saying is I'm not seeing people say, I need to update the plan or I need to do the transition. What you're talking about is I need to get together with the team, because again, if we want to go far, we have to go together. And the way to go together is to get people involved. Well, good. So finishing strong in 2015. And the key 3 things. Number 1 is shared vision, teams involved. Number 2 is the Q3 to Q4 transition meeting. I've given you the agenda. I've given you some tips to make it fun and exciting. And then number 3 is make sure you roll it out to the entire company so everybody's involved. Well, good. So that's it for today. I'm just going to open it up right now. If there's any other questions, I'll stay on the line for the next 15 minutes. If you have any questions that you want to send me emails on, if you're interested in the workshops or the book, just send me an email. And next month, it's always the first Thursday of every month, we'll have our next E3 learning series. It'll be on effective meetings. Absolutely, Becky. You can get a copy of the slides. Sounds good, Luis. You're welcome. Thanks for the encouraging words, Jessica. Sounds good, Jeff. I'll give you a call. Oh, you're welcome. Yes, so Lisa, the slides will be available, and also this is being recorded, so you'll have access to that too if you want to look at it again, or if you want to share that with your team or others. Yeah, sounds great, Scott. Work on setting up the plan. You have a copy of the book, so use that. And then once you get it set up, just shoot me an email and I'll take a look at it and give you some feedback on it. Yeah, so that's a really good question, John, because again, there's this really fine balance of being able to be flexible to what's happening in the environment, but not allowing people to get away from being accountable for their goals. So I would just tell you there's no clear, hard, and fast rule. Oh, I apologize, Lauren. Yeah, so the question from John was, when you talk about deleting goals, share with me more about that, because I've always been told you just have to complete the goal and it's not deleted. And one of the things I would tell you is that the team really holds each other accountable. So it's going to be very hard when you have such a tight team and they're really based around a set of strong values. It's really hard for someone to come to the team and say, hey, I'm just not going to make that goal. The signs of that are, hey, throughout the quarter, when you're talking about quarterly goals, throughout the quarter, you should be following the Lead with Purpose meeting template. And on a weekly basis, you're basically reviewing the plan and you're updating the status, whether it's on track, at risk, or whether it's critical. Now, I would tell you if there's 12 weeks in a quarter, and if you go through the first 10 weeks and the goal is on track, and then suddenly it changes from green to red, it changes to critical, I mean, there's a real problem there, because very few goals, if they're being properly managed and looked at, change from green to red. Now, you might lose a contract, which makes a sales goal turn from green to yellow or to red. But if there was an issue, it should have changed to yellow first, 6 weeks into the goal, and then it should have changed to red. So it's just a really fine balance. I would tell you that it's not very hard, and it's very easy to sniff out when someone's trying to get out of being responsible or being held accountable. Okay, good. So are there any other questions? Anyone else have any other questions? So that's great. So if you're still on the line, you're still listening, go out and make it a great day. This is Mark Kohler. I'm going to sign off, and please email me or call me if you have any additional questions. Thanks, Miguel. You too, Cindy. Have a great day.